Welcome to Lesson 10, Drawing Skirts and Dresses. Today we are going to learn how to draw skirts and put some fullness into them. We'll talk about gathering, and we'll talk about pleats and all kinds of fun things. So, what makes it a skirt, and how do we draw a skirt? Well, one of the things about skirts is you have to look at the hemline, what's on the bottom, and you have to look at the shape. How full is it, or how narrow is it, and how is it constructed, or how is it put together? So let me zoom in a little bit here so we can take a closer look at these. And one of the things that you'll see is that this skirt, which is called a pencil skirt, doesn't have any fullness in it at the top. It has a little bit of fullness at the bottom here. This skirt, which is a flared skirt, still doesn't have any fullness in the top here, any gathers, but you can see that it's got fullness on the bottom. And then our third skirt here has fullness at the top, which we call gathers, and of course the gathers make the fullness all the way down to the bottom. So those are the things we're going to learn to look at and figure out how to draw them. First skirt we are going to draw is going to be a flared skirt. And a flared skirt, the way that a flared skirt is made is this part, this is a pattern shape for a flared skirt, and this part at the top of the skirt would fit right around your waist. It's kind of like a circle skirt, and then this part of the skirt is cut very, very, very large, and this is when it hangs down straight, is going to give you these nice soft folds. So when we look at how these are falling, we'll look at how we're going to draw these. And let's get out our drawing pad and get out your tracing paper, and let's stick your croquis for flats, for drawing skirt flats, underneath your tissue paper. And let's take a look at what we're going to draw. So the first thing that we're going to draw is we need to indicate where the waistline is, if it's a high waistline, if it's a low waistline. And let me just put a couple of pictures here that we'll take a look at. Here's a little flared skirt front, here's a little flared skirt back. So let's take a look and we'll try and draw these. So if I look at this skirt here, it's got a really long yoke on it, and it looks like it's going to come up about right here. So I'm going to make a little indication of where the top of that skirt is going to be. And it's going to fall fairly close. How about if I move these over here? Much better. Right here. There we go. So it's going to fall fairly close on the hips like this. Now we have to determine approximately how long we're going to make it. I'm going to make this one just above the knee. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little dotted line like this in here. Now right now that would be what we would call a pencil skirt. There's no fullness to it. But I've got a length determined, and I have my top determined, and I have a yoke drawn in there. So now what I need to do is I need to look at putting some fullness in there. And when we talk about fullness, if you look at these folds here, can you see how they're kind of cone shaped? They flare out at the bottom like this, and then they taper in towards the top. And they're all falling fairly straight because gravity wants to drag our folds down straight. So let's draw one fold and see how we do. So I'm just going to take and I'm going to draw one fold right here, and I'm going to draw my little cone shape like this. You see I've just drawn a little triangle. Now I'm going to come over here and I'll draw another one right here, and I'll put a final one on the edge here and another one on the edge here. Now I'm going to take out this croquis because I think it'll be easier for you to see. I've kind of got it figured out, and I've got my shape and my size. Now that still looks pretty darn strange. So now what I've got to do is I've got to start joining some things together. Now this cone right here needs a bottom on it. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a curved bottom like that. This little cone's going to get a curved bottom. This little cone is going to get a curved bottom, and so is this one. Now it's starting to look a little bit more like a skirt. These are the folds that are getting pushed forward. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to indicate the part that is not getting pushed forward, which is right here. This is the part of my skirt that is kind of pushed back. So let me clean this up a little bit so you can see what I've done. Now, just some tips on drawing these folds. You always, always, always want your folds to curve up like this. You don't want your fold to curve down like that. So the edges always have to turn up. So if you look in, and when we get to the computer lesson, when drawing folds, we'll talk about these as being smiles and frowns. So here we have a smile on the bottom of the pleat. It's not really a pleat, it's a fold. And here we have a frown. Can you see my smile? There's my smile, there's my frown, there's my little people. So frowns go on the inside where the fabric is pushed back, smiles come forward, as you can see here. Now, I'm not liking this too much in terms of the overall shape, so I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to flare this out a little bit. I'm not real happy with this. So I'm going to take a little creative license here, and I'm just going to bring that out like that. And I think I'll flare this out a little bit more. And again, I'm going to make my smile because it's the bottom of my fold. So when you are drawing your flats, be sure that your sides are even. These should fall towards the center. The closer they get to the center, the straighter they're going to fall. And that's how you do a flared skirt. Now, if I wanted to put a waistband on it, I could draw it up here. If I'm looking at my drawing here, I could take and put my little yoke in there. So how would I do the back view? The back view is going to be almost identical. I'll take and tear this off, just like we've done with other things. I'm going to fold it like this. And I'm going to trace it. And I'll get my waistband and my yoke, which extends all the way in the back. Here's my cone-shaped pleats, like this. Here's my smiles on the bottom part of the cone-shaped part of the fold. I don't know why I keep calling it a pleat. These aren't pleats. We'll do pleats in a minute. Now, we got to have a way to get into it. Now, if you look at my back view right here, you'll see that it's exactly the same as the front. The only difference is I've got a center back seam, which is going to go right here. And I'm going to indicate a little center back zipper. And the way that I do that is I just make some little dashed lines as there is stitching on either side of my center line, and I've got a back. So here's my flats for a flared skirt, both front and back. So, can I get them all on the camera? Let me see here. I think I can. There we go. So this is my front view right here. I'm a little unhappy with this yoke. Double check things that they look symmetrical. It's really easy to do on the computer, and it takes a little bit more patience when you're doing it by hand. So here's my front flared skirt. Here's my back view of the same flared skirt. So now, just like always, we are going to ink our drawings. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your drawing that you just did in pencil, you're going to place it underneath the tissue, and then we are going to very, very carefully get a really nice smooth line like this and like this. I'm going to turn my paper because it'll be a little easier for me to draw. Here's my yoke on my front. I'm going to do my little cone shape folds like this. And trying to keep them as smooth as possible. And then I'm going to put in my little smiles, which is the bottom part of the fold right here, and my little frown, which is going to be connecting the back. Now, when you're doing those frowns, you don't want it to go too high up in the air, or it looks really strange. It doesn't look like a fold. On the back, same thing. Get my folds in there like this, and when you do that center back seam, let's make my little smiles in here, trying to keep everything connected, no little holes, and I'm going to come down a little bit like this. Here's my center back seam, straight down. If you want to use a straight edge, you can, like for a center back seam. There's my yoke. There's the top of my skirt, and my thinner pen just dried up. I left the cap off of it, so it would be a good thing to do your your zipper using a finer tip pen for your little details. But that is how you do a flared skirt. We would draw a different type of skirt that is gathered at the top. Let me move in just a little bit. And you can see that the difference between the flared skirt and the gathered skirt is that we've got some fullness now coming out of the waistband, which we didn't have on the flared skirt. Remember, the flare was very plain up here. We just had the fullness down here. Now, the mechanics for drawing it are pretty much the same. We're going to indicate where the waist is. We're going to indicate the length of the skirt, and with a little dotted line so we'll have a reference point. And then we're going to draw our gathers in, like you can see here. Now look at the angle of the gathers. The gathers are all, the ones in the center are going almost straight up, got a little cone shape here. As we get from the edges, see how they're angling towards the waistband. They're not going straight up and down, like this pleat is not going in this direction. It's angling towards the waistband. So all of your gathers that go from the hemline to the waistline, they need to end at the waistline. They can't end like here at the side seam. So let me show you how to do that. So you're going to get out your croquis for drawing flats and indicate where your waistband is. I'm just going to do a little waistband right here. Try and get it as symmetrical as I can. I'm going to get my silhouette, which is here. Give it a little bit of flare, and here's my dotted line. Of course, you can make your skirt any length that you like. I'm just doing kind of an arbitrary length here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to indicate my gathers. Now I'll put more gathers in. Now not all gathers go all the way down to the hem, so I'm just going to put a few, but can you see how I'm angling them towards, they're all flaring out towards the hemline. I don't have any that are going like this, straight up like that. That would be incorrect. So I've got to erase that line. And now all I have to do is figure out where my little smiles and frowns are going to go. There's my skirt. And I'm going to draw a couple more here. Let me just do a few more in here. Make this a really full skirt. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, and you don't want them all exactly the same, so I'm just going to go and I'm going to start making some smiles and frowns. Let me make one more right here. Okay, so I'm going to do, here's a smile, I'm going to alternate them. So there's a smile, let me take out the croquis, it'll be easier to see. And here's a smile, and here's a smile, here's a smile, and a smile. My last one will be up a little bit, and this one will be up a little bit. Now in between, I think I'm going to make one more line down in here. Now sometimes you don't have to because it doesn't push it all the way out. So what I can do is I can just make this one, maybe go behind a little bit, and it'll just make a little double one like that. Here's a frown. Here's another frown. Here's a frown. Here's a frown, and voila, I have my gathered skirt. So now all I have, and I don't like how this is tucking under, so I'm going to bring this, flare this out just a little bit. Now remember, on the outside of on the very edges of your skirt, it always needs to end in a smile. The curve has to go up. So I'm going here, and it's going to go up. It's a little bit shorter than all the ones that are down, but unlike these that are a little bit shorter, which are frowns and going downwards, these are going to flare up. And then all I have to do to indicate that this is a curved gathered skirt, I'm going to add a few more gathers up here. You see I'm just making some lines, and now I've got a really nice gathered skirt. So what I could do now is I could completely cover, I could trace this and get my back view, so I don't have to worry. It's going to be exactly the same size, exactly the same proportions, and I have to put some sort of a closure in it. So here's my, zoom in. Here's my waistband. Again, try and keep it as symmetrical as you can. There's my silhouette, and trace down these. They'll be a lot closer at the top than they are at the bottom, and they flare out more as we get to the edges. Here we go. And there's my smile, smile, frown, smile, frown, smile, frown, smile, frown, There we go. All right, so I'm going to add my few more little... Now, I've got to figure out how I'm going to get in and out of this skirt. It's always really important that you can wear a skirt. You can't wear it if you can't get into it. So in this case, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put a center back seam that we did with the flared skirt, bring it all the way down, and I'll just put my little dotted lines in here to indicate that there is a zipper. And that is how... So this is the back. And this is my front. And of course I'm going to trace that in ink, pretty of similarities. And the next skirt we're going to draw is a pleated skirt. Now you can see here I've got a little drawing, a flat of a pleated skirt, and it's not that much different than the gathered skirt in that it has the same bottom on it, but what's different is this is very sharp. And this is what's going to make it look like a pleat instead of a gather. So let me show you the difference between this and the flared skirt. Now can you see how these are very soft and the lines are curved a little bit? These lines are very, very straight and almost as if they were drawn with a ruler. So because pleats are pressed and they don't fold softly, so that we got to make it look nice and crisp. So to draw our flat for a pleated skirt, first you have to decide where the pleats are. As always, I'm going to indicate where my waistband is. Get that drawn in first, and then I am going to get my silhouette, the length of it. I'll make this one a really short little skirt, like a little cheerleader skirt. I'm going to put in my little dotted line so I know how long it's going to be. And now I need to figure out where my pleats are going to be. Now pleats always have to end in a seam. They are either going to go all the way to the top of the skirt, which is pretty unusual, or they're going to end in a waistband, or they're going to end with some sort of seam that holds the pleats in place. So I'm going to indicate where my pleats are. In this particular one, I've got a center front seam, center front pleat. I've got another pleat right here, and another pleat right here. So that's where my pleats are going to close up. So after I've indicated where those are, and let me take my croquis out, it's easier to see. I'm just going to take and make my V's coming off of that. So I'm going to come over here, and the underfold of a pleat is smaller than the part of the pleat that's on top. Here we go. Alright, so the part of the pleat that is the smile is the large part. So I'm going to make my smiles right here like this, staying on my dotted line. My frown is going to be right here in between the pleats, and voila, we have a pleated skirt. They're pretty easy to draw. You just have to remember the key is to keep everything pretty straight, because skirts that are pleated are pressed, and it's a really crisp line. Let me get my silhouette here. So that would be our my pleated skirt front. If I did the back, I would turn it over, I would trace it, I've got my skirt back, exactly the same silhouette, and it would be done. And then of course I'm going to trace this in black ink. So that would be how you would draw a pleated skirt. Is an accordion pleated skirt. An accordion pleated skirt is just a skirt that has a lot of little pleats in it that are all going usually in one direction. So let me show you how to draw the flat for that. We'll use our croquis. I'm going to show you how to draw an accordion pleated skirt two different ways. So when we're drawing an accordion pleated skirt, we're going to start it out just like we did all of our other skirts. Here's our little contour and our little dotted line, so we have a reference point. I'll put a waistband on it. Now with an accordion pleated skirt, we've got a lot of little lines, and let me take the croquis out because I think it's easier for you to see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a lot of little lines. They all have to originate at the waistband. Can you see how I'm going like this? And they're all flaring slightly. Now when I get to the center, they're going to be almost vertical, or they are going to be vertical. Can you see how these pleats are standing straight up like this? Then as we get closer to the side, I'm going to angle them out a little bit. And there we go. So we've just got a lot of little straight lines. So now what I need to do is I need to do the bottom treatment. And there's two ways that we can do an accordion skirt. So let me show you what's called a knife pleat. And on a knife pleat, the way that we draw that is we simply take this and we draw each one up just a little bit from the one next to it. Can you see how I'm angling this line here? And when I'm all done, I don't want too extreme of an angle. That's why these little dotted lines, my hemline, comes in real handy. There we go. And so now I've got an accordion pleated sleeve where they're all going the same direction. So let me show you one more variation of a way to do a hemline on an accordion skirt. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to this skirt is exactly the same as the first accordion skirt I just drew. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just do this little zigzag. Can you see how I'm I'm joining the lines together like this? And it makes it look more open. And I'm just doing a up and down and up and down. And take off my little extra lines here, and I have just a different way of drawing an accordion pleated skirt. Part of this lesson is to draw skirts both as a flat and as an illustration. So I wanted to kind of talk more about drawing illustrations and something that's called fashion perspective and how we get things to look like it's got a little bit of perspective, a little bit of movement. Now I have three drawings here, and if you look at the angle of the hemlines and the waistline, you can see that they're curving, and where it's not curving is right here at the very middle. So in fashion perspective, the horizontal line or eye level is right here at the waist, and so everything above the waist curves this way around the body. Everything below the waist curves this way. It's a concave curve. So smiles underneath the waist and frowns above the waist. You can see this arm, because it's above the waist, it's going to curve this way. Now if we had a long sleeve and the arm was down below the waist, we would make it go in a concave. So your neckline, your collar details, they're going to follow the contours of the croquis, of course, but the curve is going to, if you've got a curve in the garment, we're going to curve the edges of the sleeves, the edges of the skirts. All of those hemlines are going to be curved either convex or concave, which is this way. Alright, so let's also look at the angle. It's called the angle of the pose, and what that means is if you've got a croquis and she's standing with one hip higher than the other, we've got a high hip. We've talked about that high hip. So here is our horizontal line right in the middle, and now you can see here, this is a really great croquis because all of the lines have been put on for you, the perspective line, but you can see anything below the waist, see how it's curving this way in a concave curve? And now look what happens to her arm. Here it's convex, meaning it's curving in a frown this way because it's above the waistline. Frown, frown, frown. Horizontal line right at the elbow. Now look at what happens. See how the contour that's going to go around her arm is changing shape into a concave curve. Also, look at the angle. See how of course the blouse would have to be drawn from shoulder to shoulder, and if you look at this, this is very definitely a slanted angle. The hemline is going to have, of the blouse, is going to have to follow that hemline. Now she's got her high hip, so her hips are not even, and the high hip is going to follow along this way, but can you see how the length of the skirt, the hemline of the skirt follows the waistline? You can see this stripe, it's following the waistline. Now, if you look at this, this is the same length from here to here. It's not longer. It's just that the whole thing is angled. Same thing with this one. If I put my pencil in here, you can see it's the same length here as it is here, but it is angled. And so this hemline here is following the same angle as at the waistline, or the hip line. So that's something really, really important to pay attention to. So as you're drawing, your drawings look really natural and they look really normal. They don't look odd. So here's just some more fashion perspectives. Let me, oh, I think you can see it pretty well here. Again, let's look at the angle of pose. Here's our neutral line or horizontal line right across the middle here. Everything is curving this way because it's above, this way because it's below. High hip, more fabric sticking out. Low hip, less fabric sticking out. So we have a lot of things to pay attention to when we are drawing a skirt, anything that has quite a bit of fabric. Pants didn't have a lot of fabric, skirts do. So when we're looking at an illustration, we've got that high hip. That hip is throwing out the skirt. You're going to have more fabric showing in this side, less fabric. This is going to fall down a little bit straighter, and that holds true with any of the garments that you are drawing with it. So let's talk about drawing an illustration now. So when fabric is draped from the waist, it always moves away from the high hip side. So here's our high hip, here's our high hip, and you can see that here's the angle of the pose. See, it's angling along with the angle of the hips. And see how this is hanging fairly straight and this is being tossed out. This is being flared, the hip is kicking it out. And so we have more fabric here and less fabric here. Can you see how we have a great big, we're kicking it out this way and just a little bit because gravity is bringing it straight down. So that's another thing really important to pay attention to. Finished drawing was a flat. Here's a flat similar to the one that we just drew. Now when you have a flat, the folds fall very, very straight because gravity drags them down straight. Now how do we draw a flared skirt as an illustration? Well, with the illustration we've got a croquis with a little bit of pose to it, and the gravity is still going to want to bring those folds down as straight as it can unless there's something in the way like a hip that's swinging it out and giving it a little bit more fullness. Now hopefully you can see the difference between this, which is an illustration of a flared skirt, and this, which is a flat of a flared skirt. And this has a little bit more movement. Also, this is symmetrical and this is not symmetrical. So let's kind of take a look at what the difference is. Now one of the things about the flat in this example here is everything is pretty symmetrical and the folds are falling straight, but they're also all the same size. Now if we look at our illustration, we have a little bit more variety in the way that the folds are falling. Now you can see here that the folds are still falling straight down, but the widest fold is coming off of what we call the high hip side. If you look at this, the hip is higher on this side than it is on this side, and this fold is definitely wider than this fold, and that reason is because gravity is just dragging this fold straight down. The hip is causing this to flare out a little bit. So let's talk about drawing that, and let's draw one of those together as the illustration. So I've given you an illustration croquis. Get out your drawing pad and your tracing paper. Put your illustration croquis underneath like this. Move it up a little bit so we can see her whole body. And let's draw a flared skirt as an illustration. So let's draw the same one that I was just working on, that we just did the flat for. And if we look at how this is constructed, remember we had that yoke. Put it right here so you can see it. And you can see here I've got some lines that will help me figure out the angle for this skirt. So I'm going to follow this line right here. And I'm going to draw this a little bit below the natural waistline here. And I am going to draw the yoke about right there. Now what's going to happen here for my illustration is this is my high hip side right here. So this is going to flare out the skirt a little bit more. It's going to fall straighter off of this side. Can you see I've flared it out more here and I've let it hang straighter on this side. So I've got to still indicate where my hemline is. I'm going to make it about right here. And then I've got to draw in where my folds are. So I'm going to draw in my folds from the center so that that's going to be my smallest one. So I'm going to make my little cone-shaped fold. It's going to come like this. And it's going to be kind of narrow. No, I don't like that angle. Let me do that over again. I really want it pretty vertical. So I'm going to bring it up like this, and it's going to be fairly narrow. Lift it up a little bit so you can see it. See how I've just, so that's my first little fold right there. Now I'm going to draw another fold, and let's see, I'll make another fold over here. It'll be like medium size, and then this one over here is going to be my widest one because it's on the high hip side. You see how I have 3 little cones drawn in there? So what I'm going to do now is I am going to connect the bottoms of my cones, and when it's a little one like this one, I can pretty much just come straight across like we did with the flat. Can you see what I've done there? This one, I'm going to just give it, remember the edges have to go up, my smiles have to go up at the corners of the mouth, and I'll just give this one a little bit of a wiggle because it's got a little bit of extra fabric in here. This one, I'll give it a little bit of swing also, just a little bit of wiggle. Can you see how I've done that? Oops, I didn't go to the edge. Right here, it's going to be up. So it's not completely smooth. And now all I have left to do is I've got to put in my frowns, which are right in here, and right in here, and always end your skirt as it wraps around the body with a smile. So see, I've got a partial little fold right here, and that is going to swing up, and I think I'll make that a little bit wider. Again, here, and I'm making a smile right there. All right, and I think these are a little bit close. All right, so there's my rough outline of my skirt as an illustration. Now, it looks a little strange because I need a body underneath it, so I'm really quickly going to give her some legs. I know this is going off the screen, but I'll show you. I'll zoom out in a second. Give her a little bit of legs here, go over her knee. Because remember, an illustration always has to show the body, because we can kind of see. Now let me go up here. And I'll put a little, on this one, let's see, I'll give her a little blouse. I'll put a little jewel neckline on it. Here. There's my shoulder seams. Now it's an illustration, so it's not going to be absolutely symmetrical. I'll come around here, and I'm going to make this a little blouson. I'll make just a little bit of a, turn this into a dress. It's going to come over her bust line here, and it's going to make a little bit of a blouson here. Blouson meaning it's going to curve out a little bit. I think I'll make this kind of a little bit of a full sleeve here. Bring it here, come in here, the little band, give it a little fullness here, and I'll draw her little arm in here. Because really I'm showing a full illustration. So when you do your flared skirt on an illustration, I want to see the whole thing. Here's her neck. I want to see the whole outfit, not just the skirt. And here's her head. So let me take that croquis out so you can see what I've done. And it looks like I'm missing an arm or a sleeve. So let me slip that back underneath there. There's not much of an arm that's going to show, so I'm just really going to show a little bit of a curve right there for the other sleeve. Alright, so there's my little blouse. You've got a little bit of a sleeve on it. There's my skirt, and you can really see it starting to come together. Now I could add details on here if I wanted to. Maybe I'll put a little flat Peter Pan collar on it. Remember, it's going to be smaller on this side where it disappears around because it's got some little bit of perspective to it. Here we go. It's my Peter Pan collar. And then what I would do when I'm all finished and I'm feeling pretty good about this, let me zoom out so you can see her whole body. There we go. And you can see I've got the legs, the arm, a blouse, and the skirt all together. And there's my little skirt illustration, a flared skirt as an illustration. So after you've done all of your flats, you're going to look at your flats, you're going to look at your inspiration drawings, and you are going to draw an illustration, and you're actually going to be drawing 2 illustrations. So let's take a look at how you might do that. I've given you 2 illustration croquis, and you can choose whichever one you would like. And I'm going to draw this one as a demonstration so we can kind of take a look at her. And for this one, you have to indicate, where the, I always start with where the waist of the skirt part is. And it looks like this one is just underneath the bust line. So I'm going to indicate my little line right here. Now I'm going to follow the line of my croquis right here. And I'm going to draw my contour. This one looks like it's fairly long, so I'm going to follow the line of the hip and then it's going to fall down. Now remember, I'm going to have, because of the high hip, I'm going to end up with more fabric on this side of her legs and less on this side. And if I look at my drawing here, it looks like it's coming just about down to her knees. So there's my hemline right there. And let's see. Let me temporarily take this out so you can see what I'm doing. So here's my funny looking little skirt illustration. It doesn't look like too much yet. And so now what I'm going to do is I've got some gathers here. So I'm going to indicate my gathers and I'm going to bring them down. Now remember, not all of the gathers are going to make it to the hem. I'm going to go back and I'm going to add some later. And then I'm going to put in some very soft. This is not a very, it's not a very defined full skirt. So what I'm going to do is I'm still going to use my smiles and frowns. Put my smile on the outside. Then I'm just going to come up here. Can you see I'm coming over to here? And then I'm going to do I'm not doing the cones here. Oops. So this is a smile. This one has to be a frown. It's actually going to end up looking just a little bit wavy, which is good. And then here's my last one, which is a smile. Now all I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in some of my folds. Maybe I'll bring some of them and make them kind of random lengths. Some of them are going to come down farther than others. Let me clean this up a little bit. Alright, let me put my croquis back under here so you can see how this is going to pull together. So I've got that right underneath the bust line. And I'm going to look at it looks like I've got a little, get that on there straight. I've got a little bodice here. That's kind of a little V. So I have to look at my center front. Still don't think I've got that on there right. Right there. And here's my center front right here. And so it comes up just a little bit straight right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the bodice. Move it down so you can see a little better. Let's see. It looks like the top of my bodice is about right here. And again, I'm going to keep it even. I've got my straps. I'm just going to follow the line of that line that's on my croquis for my straps. This is going to go, about right here. It's going to come up. It's going to go all the way into the side seam, which is right here. And I've got to match it over here. And it looks like I've got pretty good. So let me take a look at that. That looks pretty close. So let me bring in my sides here. It's going to go over her bust line. This is fitting pretty well. It's pretty close fit. Drawing my arms because it's an illustration. I'll bring her arm over her skirt like that. I'll have to erase part of her skirt. Here's her neck and her head. I'm not even going to put any features on it. I'm just trying to get the illustration done. And then I'll go in here and I'll put her legs in here. A little knock-kneed. There we go. Okay. And let me take that croquis out so you can see what I've done. And let me zoom out a little bit. Come on, zoom. There we go. Might be a little far. Let's see if I can bring it in a little bit more. Zoom either wants to go all the way out or all the way in. So here's my croquis, and she looks pretty good. I know this. Notice on here I've got some darts. So I'm going to give it a couple little darts right here. It looks like it might have some sort of little detailing. It's kind of hard to tell in here. I'll just make a little wiggly line in here. It's kind of hard to tell what it is. And it also looks like I didn't quite make this wide enough. It's got a little pleat in it. I'm going to take this, swing it out just a little bit more. There's my little pleat. And my skirt looks pretty good. And it looks like I am ready to ink this. I think her shoulder or arm looks really huge. So I'm going to bring up her arm. Let me put that croquis underneath there and see what happened. She looks like a muscle lady. Alright. So it looks like the arm actually needs to come up into her body a little bit. Let's see how that looks a little better. Yes, that does look a lot better. There we go. And just because most models are kind of skinny, I might just pare down this shoulder a little bit. So, use the croquis as a basis for your drawing. And you can take creative license with it. If you don't like the shape of it, you can change it. and you'll all develop your own drawing style. So now, in order to finish this, what I need to do is I need to ink it and draw a second view. Now this would be appropriate for a gathered skirt styling. So my next one would have to be a pleated, or it'd have to be a flared. No straight skirts in your illustration because you're not going to learn anything and they're way too simple. And that's how it's done. Let's talk about how we're going to turn this in and what you're going to actually draw for lesson 10. So what I want you to do is draw 4 skirt flats. I want a front and a back view, just like I just demonstrated. I'd like a pleated skirt, a flared skirt, a gathered skirt, and a straight skirt. I do not want you to show the croquis in the finished drawing because it's a flat. And you can use your fashion portfolio pictures from your homework for styling ideas. I would go online, look at Butterick, look at McCall's, etc. Then I want you to draw illustrations of 2 dresses. And again, you can use your portfolio pictures for your inspiration, your homework pictures. This one, of course, is going to show the croquis, and the bodice has got to be included because it's a dress. So you're going to include sleeves and some sort of neckline treatment. And you're going to use any 2 different skirt techniques from on top. So you don't have to draw 4 illustrations with the 4 different skirt techniques, but you do need to draw 2, and you get to draw your 2 favorite skirt techniques that you learned up here. I do not want you to draw a pencil skirt. They're too easy, they're too simple, and you won't learn anything by doing it. So I'd really like for you to draw something that has some flair on the bottom. So let's talk about on the bottom here how it's going to be graded. You're going to do 4 skirt flats, both a front and a back view. I'm going to be looking for details and quality if the pleats and gathers are drawn correctly. On your illustrations, you only need to do a front view. You do not need to do a back view. And I'm going to basically be looking at the same thing. Your pleats and your gathers are falling correctly. I'm looking at your hemline contour, the angle of the pose, your high hip side, and I'm looking as if your bodice is integrated with your skirt. It's kind of the styling. Did you just do a simple little tank top that took no skill at all, or did you do something with a collar and some sleeves? And then, of course, I'm always looking at details and quality, and that includes your pen work. All of your drawings that you submit should be detailed in and outlined in the pen. So this particular assignment is worth 55 points, and you're going to turn in a hard copy to me. Check your calendar for due dates. Happy drawing!